Today, we are going to discuss how childhood emotional neglect shapes adult life. We are diving into a topic that's often overlooked in discussions about mental health and personal development. This is very important for parents or caretaker. We'll explore how experiences from our earliest years, specifically, a subtle form of trauma known as emotional neglect, which can profoundly influence who we become as adults. This isn't about the dramatic, visible traumas like physical abuse or violence that we commonly hear about. Instead, it's about the quiet absences. The times when a child's feelings were ignored, dismissed, or simply not acknowledged. These seemingly small oversights can create lasting ripples, leading to anxiety, numbness, disconnection, and a host of other challenges in adulthood. Let me set the stage clearly. Childhood trauma, in the broadest sense, refers to any experience that overwhelms a young person's ability to cope, altering their brain and emotional development. But the type we're focusing on here is relational trauma, particularly emotional neglect. This occurs when caregivers or parents fail to provide the emotional attunement a child needs, meaning they do and consistently respond to the child's feelings with empathy, validation, or support. It's not malice. Often, parents are dealing with their own stresses, cultural norms, or unaddressed issues from their past. The child is not beaten or yelled at, but they're not truly seen or heard either. As a result, the child learns to suppress their emotions to survive, and this pattern carries into adulthood, affecting relationships, self-worth, and overall well-being. To make this accessible, I'll break it down step by step. We'll start with the basics of child development and how the brain responds to emotional environments. Then, we'll discuss the specific mechanisms of emotional neglect, using real-world examples and drawing from psychology and neuroscience. I'll incorporate technical details from fields like attachment theory and neurobiology, but I'll explain them in plain language, like comparing the brain to a computer operating system that's been programmed with faulty code. Finally, we'll talk about recognition, healing, and prevention, ending with practical takeaways. By the end, I hope you'll see that this isn't just academic. It is a lens through which many of us can understand our own lives or those of loved ones. First, let's talk about the foundations of child development. From birth, humans are wired for connection. Psychologists like John Bowlby, who developed attachment theory in the mid-20th century, showed that infants form bonds with caregivers not just for physical survival like food and shelter, for emotional security. Think of attachment as the blueprint for all future relationships. A secure attachment forms when a caregiver consistently responds to a baby's cues, picking them up when they cry, smiling back when they coo, or soothing them during distress. This builds trust in the world. In technical terms, this process involves the limbic system, the part of the brain responsible for emotions and memory. The amygdala, a small, almond-shaped structure, acts as the brain's alarm system, detecting threats and triggering responses like fear or calm. The hippocampus, nearby, helps process and store memories. When a child feels emotionally safe, these areas develop healthily, allowing for balanced emotional regulation. But in emotional neglect, the caregiver's lack of response leaves the child in a state of chronic low-level stress. It's like leaving a car's engine idling too long. It wears down without obvious damage. Emotional neglect isn't always obvious. It's the parent who tells a crying child, "Stop being dramatic," instead of asking, "What's wrong?" Or the family where achievements are praised, but feelings are taboo. According to Dr. Jonas Webb, a pioneer in this field and author of Running on Empty, emotional neglect is a parent's failure to respond enough to the child's emotional needs. It's harm that's passive, not active. Studies from the Adverse Childhood Experiences, also called ACE framework, developed by the CDC, Kaiser Permanente in the 1990s, listed emotional neglect as a key ACE. High ACE scores correlate with adult issues like depression, addiction, and chronic health problems. But unlike physical abuse, which might score high on ACEs due to visible events, emotional neglect scores points for what's missing. Now, how does this play out in the brain? Let's get a bit technical, but keep it simple. During childhood, the brain is incredibly plastic, meaning it can change and adapt based on experiences. This is called neuroplasticity. Positive interactions release hormones like oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which calms the nervous system and strengthens neural pathways for trust and empathy. In neglect, however, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the body's stress response system, gets overactivated. Cortisol, the stress hormone, floods the system repeatedly. Imagine your body's stress dial stuck on medium instead of resetting to off. Over time, this leads to hypervigilance. The adult is always on alert for rejection, even in safe situations. Research from the field of developmental psychology supports this. A 2015 study in the journal Child Development found that children with emotionally unavailable parents showed altered activity in the prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive control center for decision-making and emotion regulation. These kids grew into adults who struggled with impulsivity or emotional flatness. It's not that they're weak. Their brains adapted to minimize pain. Dissociation, a common coping mechanism, is like hitting a mental mute button. It detaches you from feelings to avoid overwhelm. In extreme cases, this can mimic symptoms of disorders like ADHD or depression, but the root is relational. Let me illustrate with a hypothetical case study inspired by common clinical examples. Consider a child named Sarah. Her parents are loving providers. Dad works long hours as an engineer. Mom manages the home, but they're from a culture where emotions are seen as private. When Sarah, at age 6, comes home upset after being teased at school, her mom says, "Don't worry about it. It'll pass." No hug. No deep dive into her feelings. Sarah learns that sadness is something to swallow. By age 10, when she excels in math but feels lonely, her achievements get applause, but her isolation goes unnoticed. Fast forward to adulthood. Sarah is a successful accountant, but she feels chronically anxious in meetings, fearing criticism. Relationships. She picks partners who are distant, mirroring her childhood. This is the echo of neglect. Patterns repeating unconsciously. Technically, this ties into schema theory from cognitive psychology. Schemas are mental frameworks we build early on, like I'm unworthy of attention or emotions are burdensome. These schemas influence adult behavior through cognitive distortion, twisted thinking patterns. For instance, all or nothing thinking might make someone see a minor disagreement as total rejection. A 2020 meta-analysis in Psychological Bulletin reviewed over 50 studies and found that childhood emotional neglect strongly predicts adult attachment anxiety or avoidance. Avoidant types, like Sarah, keep people at arm's length to protect themselves. But it's not just psychological. There are physical effects, too. Chronic stress from neglect can lead to inflammation, weakening the immune system. The famous Dunedin study in New Zealanders from birth since 1972 showed that those with high childhood adversity, including neglect, had higher risks for heart disease, diabetes, and even shorter telomeres. The protective caps on chromosomes that indicate biological aging. In simple terms, emotional neglect can make you age faster biologically. It's like running a marathon without proper training. Your body pays the price. Now, let's delve deeper into the adult manifestations. Many people with this history report feeling empty or numb, even in good times. This is emotional blunting, where the brain downregulates feel-good neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin to avoid highs and lows. Anxiety is common because the neglected child never learned co-regulation. How to calm down with others helps so as adults. They self-regulate poorly, leading to rumination, overthinking, or avoidance. Socially, they might be people-pleasers, overworking to earn validation, or isolators, withdrawing to avoid vulnerability. In relationships, the impact is stark. Attachment styles carry over. Secure adults from attuned childhoods form healthy bonds. But neglected ones often become dismissive avoidant, dismissing their own needs, or anxious preoccupied, clinging out of fear. A study from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology in 2018 found that adults with neglect histories had lower relationship satisfaction and higher divorce rates. They struggle with intimacy because vulnerability feels dangerous. It is like offering your heart to someone who might ignore it, based on past experience. Work life isn't immune either. These adults might excel in independent roles but falter in teams, misreading social cues or avoiding feedback. Burnout is rampant because they push through fatigue without self-compassion. Financially, Impulsivity from poor emotional regulation can lead to overspending or hoarding. And health-wise, somatization, turning emotional pain into physical symptoms like headaches or IBS is frequent. The body keeps the score, as trauma expert Bessel van der Kolk titled his book. But here's the hopeful part. Recognition is the first step to healing. If you're nodding along, thinking, "This sounds like me," you're not alone. The Adult Emotional Neglect Questionnaire, developed by Webb, is a simple tool. Questions like, do you feel like something else missing, but Cohen and pinpoint it? High scores indicate neglect's footprint. Therapy modalities like emotionally focused therapy, FTOs, or internal family systems, IFs, help rewire these patterns. EFT rebuilds attachment by practicing vulnerability in safe spaces, while IFS views the numb part as a protector to be understood, not fought. Neuroscience backs healing to neuroplasticity works both ways. Adults can form new pathways through mindfulness, which reduces amygdala reactivity, or cognitive behavioral therapy CBT. It shakes up old beliefs. A 2019 fMRI study in Nature Neuroscience showed that consistent therapy changes brain structure, increasing gray matter in emotion regulation areas. Practically start small. Journal feelings daily. Practice self-validation. It's okay to feel sad or seek supportive relationships. Exercise boosts endorphins, making you feel great. Countering cortisol. Meditation calms the HPA axis. Prevention is key for future generations. Parents can learn emotional coaching, naming feelings, validating them, and problem-solving together. Programs like the Circle of Security teach this. Schools can incorporate social-emotional learning, proven to reduce later mental health issues. Society-wide, destigmatizing therapy and promoting work-life balance helps caregivers be present. In conclusion, childhood emotional neglect is a silent trauma that molds adult life in profound ways, from brain chemistry to daily habits. It's not about blame, but understanding your struggles might stem from what didn't happen, not what did. With awareness and effort, healing is possible. You can reclaim your emotional world, feeling connected and alive. Thank you for your attention.